Welcome to Mystara, where today we're putting on our hard hats and getting to work. The topic is Artificers in Mystara, which, despite being a class that WotC added much later, still fits in the setting smoothly. Between the Magitech of Glantry, Alphacia, Rockholm, Serene, Blackmoor, the Savage Baronies, and Highreach, you've got Artificers coming out the walls. But then add Alchemists common in numerous other nations, and you realize that making magic items in Mystara is almost a cottage industry. I'm Mr. Welch. It's time to punch the clock and go to work. But first, a warning. Builders, artificers, craftsmen, and the like aren't a good fit for mini campaigns. The main reason is downtime. Just because you make a sword +1 as a basic ability doesn't mean you should. Every item with a time requirement requires the rest of the party to find something to do. The magic creation example given in Dawn of the Emperors for a wand of polymorph gives the creation time at 31 days, and that's with very limited breaks. You can take 2 days off total, but no more. That puts the Artificer out of play for a month, while the fighter is starting to hallucinate that every random passerby is an orc, and the thief is donating a good chunk of his money to charity so he can have people to rob again. It's not that just D&D has this problem. It's a common issue with any game that lets you build really cool stuff. 7th Sea, Cyberpunk, and Deadlands come to mind off the top of my head. People can debate whether or not you can buy a magic item at a store, but nobody says you can't build one. But there has to be a price, typically cash and time. Building items are a great way to vacuum up excess party funds. The party is sitting on a small mountain of gold after taunting the dragon into flying off crying. But gold is worthless if you can't spend it. Why not turn all that gold into a singing sword +2? You could easily hire somebody to do it, but there's a chance that when you activate your sword, it only knows how to throat sing, and there's no volume switch. That's why players want to do it themselves. Now, I'm assuming you want to avoid the Netrunner trap, where one player's ability takes up an excessive amount of game time because of the mechanics of the class. Like when the party takes turns announcing their intentions when they get to the town, and the Artificer's turn takes 6 months. For BECME, the solution is use the domain rules where the party members spend months running their areas, giving the wizards and their like plenty of time while the other party members also run their regions. The wizard might want to hire a city manager to handle the day-to-day operations while they're crafting their +3 Staff of Matrimony, though. 5th edition's answer to this problem was to give us the Artificer class in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, except the rules we actually wanted, by making everything those Artificers did rather temporary, as well as not giving us any magic item construction rules anyways, or guidelines for castle constructions. But we did get the glacially slow crafting times and the downtime activities. Instead, you get to improve weapons and armors temporarily, depending on your subclass, or create alchemical mixtures on the fly. You also get spells, because it's 5th edition. Everybody gets spells, even if there's no reason whatsoever to get spells in your particular class. But I digress. Mystara does have a lot of use for Artificers, both the ones that churn out magic items and the ones that serve as more combat engineers for the party. The rules state that to craft a permanent magic item, you need to be 9th level. But Mystara being Mystara, you get a continuity problem with Glantry using child labor to mass-produce minor magic items. The setting gets around this with Mystara's focus on charged items. The Prince do love their planned obsolescence after all. Several nations have a trade in magic items, but nobody is dedicated to it as Glantry is. The industry breaks down magic items into 3 categories: permanent, charged, and one use. Potions and scrolls make up the majority of the last one, but disposable magic items like feather tokens or buttons of blasting also fall into this category. Artificers must be magical, which is a problem for dwarves, a race known for its artifice in Mystara. How do we get around this if we're playing Mystara 5e? Easy, we go the warlock route. Magic in Mystara is either arcane, divine, or outsider. The last one means the magic is provided by someone not playing by Mystara's magical rules. They don't have to be malevolent. The wise women get their power from runic secrets given to them by the Northern Immortals. Dwarves are inherently non-magical. They have a built-in resistance to arcane magic. They just can't cast it. But if they're going to be artificers, they have to get it from somewhere, so enter the Forge of Power. Dwarven artificers are not so much magic users, but more like warlocks without the urge to multi-class as soon as they reach a certain level. They've been given their magic through working around the Dwarven relic. It's not true arcane power, but more residual effects given to them by the proximity of the Forge. They aren't learning new spells, but invoking more abilities from the Forge. Considering the Forge can create dimension-hopping siege engines and an entire steam engine network, letting a guy get a +1 to his cod piece of virility is an afterthought. The true kings of Artifice will always be the gnomes. That's not just in Mystara, this is across the multiverse. Faerun gnomes pat themselves on the back for inventing the dirigible and lantern. Eberron gnomes pride themselves on inventing a magical internal combustion engine. But Mystaran gnomes created a helicarrier along with entire squadrons of support craft centuries ago. Before their homeland of Falun was overrun by Kobolds, they had a technological base comparable to the 1800s, minus guns. Gnomish artificers are ubiquitous in their communities, and the image of the mad Gnomish inventor has become a stereotype among other races. Elves and Hin aren't known for their skill in crafting magical devices or magitech. The naturally magical elves have little need for it. Elves aren't going to burn down trees to fuel the forges needed to create magic items. They already make a large number of superior weapons and armors just from their traditional crafting skills. Because they're elves, they don't rely on weapons and armors as much as the other races, because they can always magic missile your face instead. They don't hold this superiority over you. They won't mock their opponent about their naturally superior weapons. They will just magic missile their face. Hin rarely take up the role of artificers for different reasons. First, they aren't known for their magical abilities, except for the Hin masters, typically. Hin can use arcane magic, but they have little interest in it, for practical reasons. You have to study magic. When a Hin hits the Ylaran stage, they don't have time to study. They want to adventure now. It's far easier to learn how to swing a sword or a blackjack than take the time to learn the web spell. Artificer magic is the same way. A Hin will be more than happy to pay someone else to do it for him than stop adventuring and make the item. When their Ylaran period is over, so are their adventuring days usually. Then the Hin will put down their weapons and start farming or become a merchant. Thus, there's a dearth of Hin artificers. The humanoids of Mystara have few artificers. Humanoids favor strength over magic. Even when they study magic, it's mostly learning from others. High-level humanoid magic users are rare because of this. Some races are too stupid to learn spells, like trolls. Others are mentally unstable, like the gnolls. Thar's legions welcome artificers into its ranks, but it's hostile to gnomes and dwarves, leaving just humans. The one exception to the lack of humanoid artificers is the kobolds. The diminutive dogmen are always looking for any opportunity to gain an advantage over their foes. And by foes, I mean anybody who's not them. The kobolds acquired large amounts of gnomish technologies from the conquest of Falun, but they didn't understand what they had. Kobolds started experimenting with the gnomish technology, with often fatal results. But once they had discovered the secret of building grenades with a throw distance further than the blast radius, the kobolds' obsession with artificers began. Kobolds don't have the same talent as gnomes. Nobody does. But they are miles ahead of the other humanoid races. The kobold flying suit might fail occasionally, but you're not going to find an orc brave enough to wear a wingsuit. While the majority of artificers are found in the known world's magocracies, there are also artificers in other nations. Darrican and Minrathad pay artificers and alchemists handsomely to produce magical items for sale, especially potions. But there's not a lot of wizards in either of those nations compared to Glantry. Most of the items created are used to help the merchant guilds get product to market safer and quicker, or as luxury goods bought by the wealthier citizens. Artificers in the merchant nations are more likely to work on an assembly line creating magical stoves than exploring a dungeon looking for components. Like the merchant princes, the benefits of working for the guild means things like components and new spells are provided for them in exchange for their loyal service. One of the rarest artificers you will find in Mystara are the Gunsmiths of the Savage Baronies. As artificers can only create smoke powder from the magical residues found on the Savage Coast, that's also the only place you will find the artillerist subclass. Gnomes may have invented powered flight, but the Gunsmiths of Cimarron invented the flak cannon. And that was one dragon who failed his surprise check. Artificers are present in all of the baronies, but they thrive in Cimarron because of the county's embrace of firearms. The inheritors control the flow of Cinebrel in all other nations, but since smoke powder harms them, they avoid Cimarron like the plague. No inheritors mean no restrictions on firearms. If you want to craft new guns, you're moving to Cimarron. The downside is that the increased use of firearms drives up the price of smoke powder. It's not that much of a detriment to the locals, but foreigners wanting a smoke powder pistol will get gouged by the artificers. In Glantry and Alphatia, artificers qualify for nobility as usual. Just because they don't practice the same kind of arcane magic as standard wizards doesn't mean they don't get the same benefits. But this doesn't put them on the same level as other nobles in terms of power. Artificers are considered the blue-collar workers of the magical world. They might be a spell-tossing blacksmith, but to a wizard, they're a blacksmith first and a wizard second. Several high-powered wizards in canon could qualify as artificers. Rolf Graustein of Glantry is probably the most famous. Instead of normal magic items, he focuses all of his abilities on golems and similar creations, with an emphasis on flesh golems. Many artificers will never make it to high level because they never actually go out and learn new methods and techniques. Instead, they work for various other wizards and nobles, creating magic items on demand. The students at the Great School of Magic must study at least one little bit of artificer magic. They're told that this is to expand their horizons on what is possible with arcane magic. In reality, their creations are sold in stores supplied by the Great School to increase the institution's income. Students that don't show promise at casting spells but are competent at the rote creation of magic items are pushed towards a career in artificing. Artificers in Mystara are a bit of a paradox. While the class makes perfect sense in the setting, it's not an easy fit. The original rules required a wizard to be at least name level. Running around and changing weapons on the fly wasn't a thing. The 5th edition Artificers have mechanical issues that many people harp on and don't always work in settings. Most Artificers work behind the scenes. Darrican has alchemists brewing potions by the gallon. Gnomes build amazing machines, but those take years. This video is more of a background look for people rather than a suggestion on how to play Artificers, because running the Tinkers and Smiths will always cause problems regardless of the system. Next week's video is on half races, or what to expect when a Vestland Berserker and a Halfling Master love each other very much. But until then, remember, all safety guidelines are written in blood.